Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we pass out the curb budget for 2021-22.
Any more discussion or comments? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Looks like it's passed out, and we'll send it along. Thank everybody for coming today. The next one on the list today is the Board of Veterinarian and Examiners budget. Any amendments or motions from anybody? Representative Newland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we pass out the Board of Veterinary Examiners budget.
Second. Gardner. Any comments? Anything? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Looks like it's passed out, and thank you for coming. Now we get to go to the fair. So we're going to open the hearing on the State Fair Board budget, and Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. The Kansas State Fair is page 685 in your purple books, so hopefully that gives you a direction to go. I'll give you a second to find it. On page 685, I would just point out that the State Fair is not only the fair itself, but the State Fair grounds holds over 500 non-fair events throughout the year. So just a note, it's not just the State Fair event itself. I'll move forward into the budget, which starts on page 692. On page 692, I'm looking underneath the box on the page. The agency estimates revised 2021 total expenditures of $3.6 million, including $1 million state general fund. This is an all funds decrease of $4.7 million and a state general fund decrease of $1 million below the 2021 approved amount. The agency estimates revised operating expenditures. Oh, sorry, I should probably explain. So total expenditures includes operating and capital improvements. We'll talk about capital improvements on the very last page, but total is operating and capital improvements. So now we'll move on to just operating, which is what we typically deal with. The agency estimates revised 2021 operating expenditures of $2.5 million, including $300,000 state general fund. This is an all funds decrease of $4.4 million and a state general fund decrease of $1 million below the 2021 approved amount. And I'll start with that $1 million state general fund decrease. That decrease is caused by the agency not including the $1 million approved by the Legislative Coordinating Council. The committee members may remember that at the end of special session, the legislature allocated $50 million state general fund, so not federal fund, state general fund, to assist agencies with coronavirus expenditures. The state fair received $1 million of that, but it was allocated after the agency turned in their budget, so it's just not included in their revised estimate. But I'll go ahead and forewarn you, the governor did add it back in, so they are getting that $1 million. It's just not included in their revised estimate for now. So that's the state general fund decrease. And I'm still in the second paragraph underneath the box on page 692. The all funds decrease is due to decreased expenditures across all categories because of the cancellation of the state fair event in 2020. So due to COVID, the agency was not able to hold its annual state fair. So not only did it not spend the money to hold the fair, it also did not receive the revenue from the fair the state fair event generates 90% of this agency's revenue, so it lost the vast majority of its revenue due to not holding the fair. So in fiscal year 2021, there's decreased expenditures due to not holding the fair. And I'll turn the page to page 693. On the bottom of page 693, the governor recommends 2021 operating expenditures of $3.5 million, including $1.3 million SGF. This is an increase of $1 million, all state general fund. And like I already mentioned, that's due to the governor including that $1 million approved by the Legislative Coordinating Council that was approved after the agency turned in their budget. And Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions on fiscal year 2021.
Anyone have any questions? Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Victoria, so on page 692, then the total loss from not having the fair is 4.66 million?
I would say more like 3.4 because of that 4.4 that you're looking at, 1 million of that is the state general fund addition not being included, and the fair doesn't usually get that. So that the fair has actually said that they've lost 2.3 million in revenue from the state fair, to be exact. So 2.3 million.
Is that somewhere on this document or not?
I mean, it's included in that 4.4 number, but the 2.3 is a more precise number caused that the fair calculated its losses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Representative Hahn?
Yes, thank you. Victoria, sorry, I forgot my book. So oh, you have an extra. So I guess my question is, just for easy numbers, how much does the fair bring in then every year normally? You said it's 80% of their budget.
Right. The fair can correct me when I'm wrong, but about the fair event brings in about $2.3 million every year.
And their total budget then is,
I'd say including capital improvements between 6 and 7 million. If you look on the very front page,
got it.
yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Victoria, do you have some type of a number, like you mentioned they do about 500 events? Do you have any kind of a number, what they bring totally in for other than just the State Fair Week or whatever?
Sure. Sure, if you turn to page 697. I'll give everyone a second. So on page 697, you're looking at a breakout of the State Fair Fee Fund, which is the agency's primary fund. They also have a State Fair Capital Improvements Fund, but that doesn't generate, that doesn't hold much revenue. So if you look at the second line down in the box under State Fair Fee Fund revenue, that's generally how much the fair brings in across the board.
Any more questions for Victoria?
Another one.
Representative Hahn?
Thank you, Speaker, or Mr. Chair, rather. Can you tell me, Victoria, does K-State, with all the 4-H activities, do they at all contribute to any of the costs towards the fair, or is that just is the state fair pretty much do all the costs and K-State just shows up?
I'll let the agency expand more on it, but I won't say that there's no like transfer from K-State or anything like that. Sure, they hold events and the agency can talk about how much they pay to hold an event. And of course, they bring people in who spend money, but there's no like direct transfer or anything from K-State to cover operating expenditures.
Perfect, thanks so much.
Thank you, Victoria. Good job.
Oh, sorry, I have to do fiscal year 2022.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. On page 694. 694, looking underneath the box, the agency requests 2022 operating expenditures of $5.2 million, including $690,000 state general fund, This is an all funds increase of $2.7 million, and a state general fund increase of $390,000. That state general fund increase is due to the agency's enhancement request that we'll talk about in a minute. And the all funds increase is across all category expenditures because the agency hopes to hold the fair in fiscal year 2022. So that would be this coming year's fair. So they're going to spend money to hold the fair and hopefully bring in that revenue this coming year after the cancellation of last year's fair. And I'll flip over the page to page 695. Looking at the first full paragraph above the first box, the governor recommends fiscal year 2022 operating expenditures of $4.8 million, including $250,000 state general fund. This is a decrease of $440,000, all from the state general fund below the agency's request. This is due to the governor not recommending the agency's enhancement request that we will talk about next, and recommending the implementation of the agency's reduced resources budget that we'll also talk about in a minute. So that enhancement request I kept mentioning is in the middle of the page. The agency has made one enhancement request for $425,000, all from state general fund, to hire 600 seasonal fair time workers. Because they didn't hold the fair in fiscal year 2021, they don't have the revenue that they usually do to be able to hire those 600 people. So they're asking for $425,000 from the state general fund to hire those people. The governor did not recommend this enhancement request. And I'll go to the bottom of the page, the agency's reduced resources budget. Just as a reminder to the committee of reduced resources, the governor asked all agencies that receive state general fund to propose a 10% cutback of their state general fund budget. This fair only receives state general fund for a couple of things. One is debt service, but that wasn't included in the reduced resources proposal. So the only other thing they receive state general fund for is $150,000 a year to help with electricity costs. And so the only thing that they could propose to reduce by 10% was their electricity costs. So that's that $15,000 reduction that you can see. And the governor did recommend that the agency implement that, so that she asked that they spend $15,000 less on electricity. And I'll go to one more thing. It's the last thing, I promise. On the very back page, page 702, capital improvements. This is our first budget that you're hearing that has capital improvements. So for background for the agency, for the committee, if an agency owns its own buildings, or in this case, buildings and fairgrounds, the agency has to pay to maintain those, and those costs are called capital improvements. So on page 702, we can look at the agency's capital improvement budget. Underneath the box, the agency estimates revised 2021 capital improvement expenditures of $1 million, including $700,000 state general fund. This is a decrease of $288,000, all from special revenue funds below the approved amount. And this is because the agency reduced expenditures on maintenance because they didn't have their usual revenue, and also because they delayed starting the renovation of the Expo Center until fiscal year 2022. And fiscal year 2022, the agency requests capital improvement expenditures of $1.3 million, including $735,000 state general fund. This is an all funds increase of $288,000, and that's caused by the agency returning to normal levels, hopefully, of maintenance because they'll have the revenue from the next year's fair, and also due to the starting of the Expo Center that was delayed in fiscal year 2021. And finally, the governor did concur with the agency's capital improvements requests. Now I'll stand for questions on the state fair budget as a whole. Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, Representative Hahn?
I feel like I need to send up a flare back here so we can.
Two linebackers.
Okay. Victoria, do you know that Expo Center, how much of that is subsidized by the state, or is it all, how much of it is subsidized by the state, or all of it is?
None of it is being paid for by the, hold on. I need to process. Okay, yes. The state fair bonded through the KDFA, that I'm currently blanking on what that stands for, Kansas Development Finance something. I'm currently blanking. Finance Authority, I was close. And they will pay that back through their State Fair Capital Improvements Fund, so it's actually not using state general fund.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Ed, are you ready to tell us all about the fair?
I'm going to tell you all about the fair.
Okay. This is Ed Berger from the State Fair.
Have we got,
Somebody coming on?
I think we're plugged in here for the screens? Okay, so we got started with the overhead. I know. Just let it check, it'll be fine. Well, let me go ahead and get started. The State Fair is something unique to Kansas. It brings so many different elements of the state together. It's a cultural event, brings the various cultures of Kansas together. It's an educational event, bringing all sorts of ages of individuals from across the state in an educational setting and environment. Of course, it's agricultural, it's industrial. All of those kinds of events are part of the Kansas State Fair. It has broadened its mission considerably since 1913, when it was more of a livestock show and a grain show than anything else. When you look at the last fair that we had, the last fair we had was in 2019. We had about 337 attendees from every county in Kansas and every neighboring state in the area, also several countries represented. Those numbers, those are very strong numbers for the Kansas State Fair. We vary from 300,000 to 350,000 attendees annually. We, of course, are dependent on the weather. If we get some rainy weather, some folks might like it at that period of time, but that usually cuts in on the crowd significantly. Annually, we call ourselves the largest classroom in Kansas. Have about 14,000 students from all across the state visiting the fair and learning about all sorts of different aspects of agriculture and the state's culture. We also have a grandstand, number of grandstand shows. In 2019, we had about 24,000 attending those. Vendors all over the fairgrounds, about 650. And of course, sponsorship and carnival up significantly in 2019. We have always focused on change at the Kansas State Fair. We want to bring something new every year. Now, we have some of the standard kinds of things at the fair, you bet. You still have the old mill, and you'll still have the exhibits that you're so familiar with, and the places to buy ice cream. But you also have new events every year at the fair. We got a new logo kind of saying what Kansas is about, the sunflower, the blue ribbon, and the State Fair right on top of it. We're going to have more Kansas and tourism involvement in the Kansas State Fair. Various communities will showcase what they have. We'll have a focus on entertainment on our free stages. It's going to be a lot of Kansas entertainment and special events and contests. Every year we have the Grand Drive. It's a great event for 4-H and FFA. And a highlight of that is the Legislative Showmanship Contest. And the heifer I had, I guess, was a wild heifer, according to what they said. I'm not sure what that means. But you could see the legislators proudly showing the steers and heifers at that event. Some of the innovations in the grandstand, one of the things we're doing is having kind of a partner on the patio. Those companies and individuals that make investments, we're going to have them have a reception for them on a patio close to the grandstand. And we also have a party pit. And the party pit is an area for people to stand very close to the stage. Our performers really like that, and that's something we've done to enhance the experience of the fairgoer as well as the artists. In 2019, other new things in 2019, free concerts at Brett's and Young. That's an arena that seats about 1,000 individuals. We have competitions that are different from the competitions in the past. A beer brewing competition, I'm not sure who won that, but that was something of great interest. And also the butter sculpting contest. Now, butter sculpting, I'm sure it wasn't a pound of butter, I'm sure it was something more than that. Something we've added to the fairgrounds are pollinator gardens. We have about 270 acres of land with the state fair. So we have well-placed pollinator gardens, and that, of course, is part of what we do with the educational experience. We have an entire building dedicated to education now, formerly the DuArt building, and that holds education experiences all the time. One thing that we had that really attracted a lot of attention we're coming back to is the draft horse parade. Now, I think the slide is kind of interesting. I looked at draft horse, I said, something's not right about that. I see a pair of mules right behind that first pair of draft horses, so I'm not sure how the mules snuck in there, but they got in there anyway. And the monster truck event, the biggest grandstand show in 2019. In 21, we have a new mascot for the fair, Ike the Bison. And Ike the Bison, this past summer, made a tour of Kansas, hit communities all across the state, and he'll be out there making more calls on the state of Kansas as we move forward. We're going to have a bull riding tour as part of the grandstand event, Moto Madness and Thrill Show, quarter horse versatility. Some of you guys are horse people. That's going to be more of a cow pony type of approach to the quarter horses than it has in the past. Special Olympics, again, that education tie-in. Going to be working with the livestock showmanship for the Grand Drive. We always have a little bit lighter attendance on Tuesday and Thursday for some reason, and we're going to go $4 Tuesday and Thursday after 4, try to juice up that attendance a little bit. And the second week is going to be an Explore Kansas event at the State Fair. Again, that's communities across Kansas being able to showcase their wares. And then, of course, the Shop Till You Drop, that's a new event. Our vendors are going to be discounting merchandise to try to get people to come to their displays and be a part of that. And then a pub crawl, first ever pub crawl. So you can see we're not standing still, trying to bring new elements in, trying to attract new markets and new people. Our funding, where does it come from? I think Victoria had a pretty good outline of that. We're basically a fee-funded organization. During the fair itself, we have commercial vendors, we've got corporate sponsors, food sales, midway sales, and then, of course, we have an RV park that's pretty busy most of the time, and then we have non-fair events, and annually about 500 non-fair events a year on the state fairgrounds. Had some very successful non-fair events in December. We had the Kansas Beef Expo, and the Kansas Beef Expo drew about 1,000 cattle. And that largely was because the events were canceled in Iowa and Nebraska. And we had people showing cattle from all over the Midwest, very highly successful. This past weekend, we had a cattle show that drew about 300 head of cattle. Before that, we had the Kansas Angus Association. So a lot of those non-fair events impact not only Kansas showers, but also people who are from area states as well. We have some issues with some of our facilities. We had planned to get started on the Expo Center. Expo Center has a roof that needs to be repaired, not replaced completely, but repaired, because the metal walls and column bases also have some rust issue we need to address. So we decided to go ahead and expand that a bit, and we're going to improve ventilation, have some increased corral fencing, and new lighting. That's all KDFA financing, paid for by the Capital Improvement Fund of the State Fair. So Expo Center, we were going to start on it this past year, but obviously we didn't have enough revenue to make that happen, so we've deferred a year. Roadways, if you've been on the fair, you know we have lots of walkways, lots of roadways across it. We've got significant needs as far as repairing those. About $850,000 of needs across the fairgrounds, and want to make sure we get those fixed before we have potholes turning into giant holes on the fairgrounds. Grandstand was really, I think when you see it in 1930, That's pretty much the way it is now, not much difference. We have some cracks developing in that concrete, and we need to be refilling those cracks. If you don't fill the cracks, moisture gets in, spans the rebar, chunks come out of the grandstand. So we want to make sure we get on that. That's about a $150,000 project. Future projects is that one would be the Bison Arena. The Bison Arena, right in the center of the campus. It was built in '37 for a cost of about $103. Had a lot of stock shows in there. More recently, we had an antique tractor show, as well as a dog show there. Fire marshal shut us down. Had to come to fire codes. We thought maybe that was a good chance for us to look at making that Bison Arena something significantly different than it currently is. But right now, it's pretty much locked down by the fire marshal. COVID took a real solid swipe at the Kansas State Fair. We had a significant cut in our revenue without having the fair itself, perhaps close to 90% of our revenue gone. Our events we had on the fairgrounds decreased from about 500 to 150. That also put a nick in our revenue. We responded by reducing our workforce by about 25%. We also furloughed 4 individuals, but we're going to have to start bringing some of those people back so we can have a fair. We requested $2.3 million in the state COVID monies, and the budget committee recommended $1 million. That was recognized by the Legislative Coordinating Council. Later, the budget committee came back and recommended 1.3 for the balance of those funds, and the Legislative Coordinating Council deferred on making a recommendation, hoping there might be some federal funds come our way. We are also going to be, again, very proactive. We have not done a great deal as far as naming buildings. We think that might be another vehicle as far as generating revenue for the state fair. Went the wrong direction here. We need, when we start the fiscal year in July, we need about $1 million to start paying for everything that begins with the fair. We'll be drawing down that $1 million in COVID funds really this month. We'll start paying utilities out of that. Looking at our budget, we have about $125,000 in our fee fund, and our monthly expenditures are about $225,000. So that $1 million will be used to offset some of those expenses. But again, the coffers are going to be very close to being dry. Our hope is we get the balance of the 2.3 and won't need the $425,000 that we've asked for. If that isn't the case, we'll need the 425. We have 600 employees that will start working probably sometime late August, first part of September. Those are part-time employees. Wages range from $6.10 to $10 an hour, but you know the fair is a very labor-intensive type of endeavor. The Kansas State Fair is our tradition. It's our tradition of education, our tradition of culture, our tradition of agriculture, and even industry. You know, for me, an individual who was born and raised in that area, we lived a half mile off of Highway 50. When I was a little kid, I can remember hearing the state fair traffic and just wishing I could go. Finally, I was able to go. That's been a part of my life since I was 6 or 7 years old. And that's the case. It's a case of many of our lives in Kansas, all across the state. From corner to corner, you have people being a part of it. Certainly, we appreciate all the support we've gotten from the legislature over past years. And believe me, the 2021 fair will be something you will not want to miss. It's going to be the biggest and best fair we've ever had. With that, I stand for some questions.
Questions?
The sort of update is, Ed, thanks for your presentation. Going back, I believe it was last year, did the fair have a bill about beer sales? And where did that bill end up?
Thank you, Senator. We have 2 bills before you right now. One is Senate Bill 1. I can catch you up on that. Senate Bill 1 is a bill that would allow us to use the capital improvement funds for operating expenses. If worse comes to worse, we've proposed that those funds could be used for general operations. Don't want to do that. That hurts us significantly. But if we're going to have a fair, we're going to have to go to all ends. This was Senate Bill 408 you're talking about.
Yeah.
And what that did was allow people to take beer off premises and then capture the revenue from the taxes from that beer and put that into the capital improvement fund. That bill has surfaced again. It's Senate Bill 2. And they haven't had a hearing on it yet, but hopefully we'll have one soon. It's in federal and state.
Just a follow-up also, you said you 2.3 million originally, you've received $1 million, and you're waiting on 1.3 million. When will that decision be made? Well, you understand, Ed, if we're working with, and you've been through this.
So I would hope sooner rather than later. I would have hoped that decision would have been made in late December when it came before the Legislative Coordinating Council. But again, it was deferred, and it was deferred because there was hope that there might be some federal money coming down the pike, so we wouldn't have to get the 1.3. That hasn't happened yet. It could happen, but we would hope that 1.3 decision on that could be made soon.
But if it isn't, and we're going through the budget process, and you're asking supplemental for 425 to hire those seasonal workers, my assumption would be, what do you suggest?
Well, what I would hope would be we could monitor the federal monies and monitor the actions of the Legislative Coordinating Council, and perhaps an omnibus, if nothing has happened, put the 425 at that time.
Okay.
That would be one way to approach it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just
And it would just be, that would just be contingent on us not getting the other money.
right. And just I make a comment, Ed. I have been always a big supporter of the fair, and I used to show quarter horses down in the arena. I was disappointed. I never really won a lot, which.
With this new category, maybe.
Yeah, well, no, that's versatility. I was showing Western stuff, but I believe you were hurt so much, and hopefully we can start building the fair back. I've been, as you've been, we've all been to other fairs around the country, which gets into, how do they do things? How do they raise money? How are they financed? And I believe I'm on legislative post-audit also, and we're, of course, doing, I believe, an audit. I don't know when we delayed it a little bit because you asked for it to be delayed, if I remember correctly. But hopefully where part of that audit is to look at surrounding states, look at other fairs, how are they financed, and give us really some good information, hopefully, so we can build on what we have today and make it even better going forward.
Thank you, Senator. And I would hope that post-audit would help that out. But right now, I did ask for that to be delayed because we're so understaffed. We're in the process. Sometimes I feel like the football coach who is down 30-0 at halftime goes in and talks to his players. He doesn't know what to say. He says, well, boys, go out and try to save some of the equipment. That's where we're at. We're trying to save some of the equipment.
Representative Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you for your presentation, and the fair also has been such a huge part of my family. I've shown many times my horses there as well, and for many in my district, the fair is the family vacation, and so it was after harvest, and that's where we would go for family vacation. I have a couple questions, if you might indulge me. The first one is, does Hutchinson, the city of Hutchinson, or the county of Reno County, do they contribute at all? Or maybe if you even have a number of how much the fair contributes to Reno County? Because it brings in, of course, hotels and restaurants.
We have a great partnership with the city of Hutchinson and the county of Reno as well. When we had the first master plan, in fact, the city of Hutchinson contributed $300,000 a year for 10 years from that master plan. And right now, part of what we do is we work with the city of Hutchinson as far as removal of debris from we have horse shows and camel shows and all. We have a partnership with them and they haul that off. So again, a good relationship. Of course, they provide a lot of security as well for us. So yeah, they are very much a great partner for us.
But not a lot of cash outlay in terms of putting the fair on necessarily then?
I think the last cash we got was probably with the master plan, which was about $3 million.
Okay. The other question is, and I'd asked Victoria, does K-State, do they contribute much towards the fair?
I'm going to answer that in a couple of different ways. Probably fiscally, no, but their presence on the fairgrounds is so important. We have the birthing center. We have all sorts of support from K-State across the fairgrounds. So it's a very big part of what we are when we have that event. So fiscally, not so much, but certainly their presence and the activity and what they bring to the fair is truly significant.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely tremendous. Mr. Chair, if I might, one of the things, so I lived in Oklahoma, I'm from western Kansas, but lived in Oklahoma for 20 years and did a lot with the fairgrounds there. And they would do arts and craft shows, a Fair of the Heart. They would do it in Tulsa as well as the State Fair there in Oklahoma City at the grounds, actually in conjunction with the World Congress Horse Show. Huge. They did it twice a year. Huge. Every woman in Oklahoma and Texas went to that craft fair. So that may be an idea for you. The other thing is that they just had, and I know you mentioned the cattle show, Oklahoma just did Cattlemen's Congress. I don't know if it's on par with what you all had just done, but it's because of course, all the stock shows being canceled. So, you know, I'm assuming you all have a sales department of people looking for opportunities to be able to bring revenue in.
Yes, ma'am, we do. Our sales department is about a two-person team, but they are always looking to try to market the fairgrounds as a place to host events, whether it be a livestock show, whether it be a llama show, whatever it might be. And again, we've had really good response. The Expo Center, you know, that's busy 40 weeks out of the year. Anytime you go by the fairgrounds, it seems like there's always horse trailers out there and people involved in the fairgrounds. So I really wish that the committee could have been there for the Kansas Beef Expo. We had cattle every place. You know, we're right in the center of town, so we've got a residential area right to the south. And we had steers tied to see people's chain link fences. You know, I'm not sure they appreciated that, but that was the way they were being accommodated. So it was very interesting. And we didn't have any complaints.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ed, thank you for coming today. So my neighbor shows cattle there, the Sankeys, and they had great things to say about the fair. Thanks, Victoria. So, and I know what happened to Representative Gartner. He sold his cowboy hat, and I know where it's at. So anyway, my question is, do you do storage at that fair? Because I know you have some really big buildings there, and the storage market is pretty lucrative. I know throughout the state and other, and
We do a great deal of storage. Homes, we have all of those things. So yeah, we do use extensively those facilities for storage during the off season.
so is that something you're expanding on? Expanding? Are you going to?
Yeah, we are. In fact, yeah, we probably need to. I think we're pretty much at capacity. What we probably need to do is look at our prices again.
Well, I'm amazed at what people pay to store things. So my final question is, I've participated in developing farmers markets, and that would be great venue there to have a statewide farmers market sometime?
That's a great idea.
Representative Gardner.
Oh, I'm sorry. Someone say maybe not so much. Evergy, right. We do. Spikes. You know, I don't know if that's been done in the past. Certainly, I haven't had the opportunity to do that, but that's something I could certainly put on my agenda. Because part of the problem is, when you're rated, you have those peaks during the fair, and that skews the whole thing up for the balance of the year. Yeah.
Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we did ask for negotiations with the city of Hutchinson on water and with Effergy, our West Star, on energy because of the peak rate situation, and we've been at that for several years. So if you do anything like that, check back into the history before you start the conversation, because if they would just charge us not a peak rate that lasts all year, it would make it work.
I know.
The other, if I might, well, I think most of it's been discussed pretty much, but the 425,000, did you not have that in your budget for last year for the seasonal workers? Did you not have something for that?
Well, not that specific. It was just part of the general budget, the expenditures we would have. We wouldn't earmark 425 necessarily, but that's actual costs of what we would have.
Well, I don't know how I'm asking the question, but you had you had revenues from the state apparently expecting to hire 600 workers.
Those are revenues generated from fees that we had. So, but again, we're basically a fee-based organization. So we had revenues last year that we could carry over.
That's what I wondered.
Yeah.
Did you carry over?
Sure.
So this is
So we had, if we would have had the fair, we started the year in July with, Victoria and I, our numbers don't match up exactly, but I think my numbers say about $800,000. And that's what we need at the beginning of the fiscal. That's why I'm saying $1 million. Because we start making significant expenditures from July through the fair. Offset of that is we also start bringing in significant revenues. So a lot of those revenues start coming in too, with people making payments on booths and that type of thing. And of course, our ticket sales accelerate as soon as the July comes around as well.
And if I might, so were you able to have some events that you used to have a lot of events, and I'm sure they were minimal this year, but did you have some weddings and that kind of thing during the year?
I'll just give you kind of a picture of what we have experienced here in the last few weeks. We have annually a women's show that Optimus does. They canceled that event. That was in March. The Chamber of Commerce of Hutchinson had their annual dinner scheduled for May, and they're also going to have an exposition. They canceled that. So we've had a lot of those cancellations. We had a person who was going to have a wedding reception in one of the buildings, And they called us about 10 days in advance and canceled that as well because they didn't think it was a risk of exposure. So, yeah, it's just, it's just been kind of one thing after another.
So basically, you were not able to hold those extra events at all this year. I didn't know if some of them might have been able to come.
Well, we're open, yeah. If you want to have your event, we're certainly open to that. But I think a lot of people have backed off of it. It hasn't been us. It's been the people who've run the facilities who decided they didn't want to do it.
And the other thing is, didn't we pass, I know we passed a bill, and Representative Don Schrader was the one who carried it, for sales tax to go to the capital improvement fund in lieu of state general fund money.
Well, it was in lieu of, actually, we weren't getting any
We
general.
weren't paying it, but we had
You-
a law
yeah,
on
you
the
weren't
books
paying it,
that.
but I know you wanted to, just.
Oh,
didn't
we
do it.
wanted to. We just didn't do it. No, we had money that we were not paying for capital improvements or bonding or
So
something.
what we had was the sales tax revenue coming back to the capital improvement fund. And of course, that generates, significant dollars, plus 5% of overall receipts go into the capital improvement fund as well. And if we didn't have that transfer, those capital improvement funds, because we didn't have the revenue coming in. So instead of generating $300,000+ in sales tax revenue, we're looking at $85,000.
So are you requesting in your budget, some SGF to make up the difference for the capital improvements payments? Because that's what my question is. Have you included that in the amount to the
We're
governor?
just counting on the revenue to be increased and having that happen for us.
Have a figure for how much it brought in when we did have events like a year ago?
Yeah, about $300,000.
It did bring in what we projected. All right, I guess that was my question. And the butter sculpting, did we have that already once?
There's always a butter sculpture there.
Yes.
So everybody can go see the cow or whatever. The lady comes down from Iowa and she does that butter sculpture.
It's the butter from Iowa. Well, that's what I wondered, because I saw it at the Iowa Fair. It was just a big event.
But this is more of a contest. So those people who look at that butter sculpture and think, God, I could do something like that. So we had a little contest. So you can bring your pound of butter down and we'll look at your sculpture.
And I can hardly make cookies with my butter. Thank you. Thank you, Ed, for being here, and thank you for your interest in the fair, and I know you're an asset to the fair. Thank you very much.
Representative,
It's really a passion for me. It's something that, again, I've been with all my life, so.
Representative Hahn?
So just so I'm clear on these numbers, because we didn't have the fair last year, there was carryover from your budget, or there was not? There was carryover, correct?
Right, we started with a positive balance in July, because as of July 1, we were expecting to have the fair. And since that didn't happen, we've been using that carryover for operations.
Okay,
See, our expenditures.
Got it.
Probably are over $200,000 a month. And so that carryover.
when you're not having events? I mean, like, even though you've not been having events?
We've got a campus to keep up, and we have events happening all the time. We have general maintenance.
But you've gotten rid of so much of your staff. Is it still 200,000 a month, even though you got rid of a quarter of your staff?
It is.
Wow. Okay. The other thing I was going to ask is, how many weekends are free for events, for projected events to help bring in some revenue?
I'm really not sure. We'd have to look at the calendar. Depends on what building you're looking at and what you're wanting to use it for. If you're looking at the Sunflower buildings, they're busy most weekends during the year. Meadowlark's a bigger building, and so you'd have to have a big show for something like that. We had a gun and knife show just a few weeks ago that drew very significantly, and we're going to reschedule that because they had such good luck with it. We have a flea market. Those are the kinds of events that we have on a regular basis.
I was in sales for too long, I think. So we need to talk to your sales department, and we need to make sure that if we have some weekends, there is a lot of opportunity for some of these larger, for instance, craft fairs. So let's talk to your sales department. Have them call me. Let's make that happen. Okay.
I've got a couple of questions, Ed. On your off-premises bill, if it passes, tell me what that means for, it's an open container off fairgrounds or off, for your drinking or whatever?
Oh, okay, you're talking about, we're hoping that when we do that, that our sales will increase by 20,000, and that's an estimate. It's been all the way from a $20,000 increase to 30,000, so that's the general thinking that it would increase between 20 and 30,000.
What I'm getting at is, what is your geographical off-premises? I mean, what's the difference between someone going to the fair and somebody that lives in Hutchinson, and they're out walking around having a good time? I'm just trying to get is it open just on the fairgrounds or all over Hutchinson?
Oh, no, it's just, and it's, on the fairgrounds, it's just going to be a particular area. It's not going to be, that's up to the State Fair Board to make that decision, but it will be probably restricted on the grounds itself. And I will tell you, we're just looking at permissive legislation. The Fair Board itself hasn't made a decision as to what that geographic area would look like. So that's still up in the air.
My last comment will be, if Topeka can get $2 million to name their expo center something, you would think that a state fair could get Bass Pro or somebody in there. The trouble with all state projects, it's always, we would like to show our best foot forward, and we're always patching up last year's stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And if the state fair is going to represent Kansas, it ought to put its best foot forward. It's tough to get what you need to that. But I think the more private money, whether it's naming buildings or selling buildings or getting people there, Kansas is kind of a rural state. I would call Bass Pro if somebody would call them. I'm just saying, that's a big outdoor part of Kansas. But sometimes people that don't do some of the activities don't think of them. And my hat's off to you. You're the voice, and I appreciate you working as hard as you have. Does anybody have any more questions or anything for Randy? I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Representative Gardner.
Mr. Chair, and appreciate you coming, Ed. You did say your expenses were about $200,000 a month since July. Are they normally more than that?
They are normally
For the year?
dramatically more. Again, we've laid off about 25% of our workforce, furloughed 4 individuals, so yeah, they're significantly more. And, we've basically said, unless it's public safety, that improvement's going to have to be put on hold. We had an air handler unit go down. I said, that was an administrative office. I said, no, we're not going to fix that. So what happened was, I don't know the mechanics of it, collected water, ceiling tile fell through, and the maintenance guy says, can we fix it now? I said, yep, you can fix it now.
Okay, thank you.
If I could respond to your question, Mr. Chairman. We do have the Next Tech Grandstand show, so and we have the Brett's Young Arena. So we're starting on that, but I concur in another life that I had, why we did a lot of naming of buildings by very generous companies, and I think that's certainly something we have to be more aggressive with. As long as it's not memorial.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd had this written down. How are we going to pay for the renovation of the Bison Arena? Because that sounds like a cool building.
I think we have to really decide what, I've been talking to our livestock people, and I don't know if you've seen the Bison or not. It's got a dirt floor and some bleachers on one side. I would really like to bring it back to maybe its original purpose and maybe just bring it up to fire code. We have a good partnership with Skills USA. And they are renovating a part of the old encampment building. If you're an old 4-H'er, you probably stayed there. But we're renovating that encampment building for education. So I would really hope that we could take a look at that Bison arena and make it another arena so we could have more horse shows, have more cattle shows in there. And with that, you know, we might have a naming of that. I think that might be something we try to do. Because it really, it's kind of a focal point on the fairgrounds. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
Well, I appreciate that answer, and I also appreciated you turning around and looking at my colleagues when you talked about old 4-H'ers instead of looking this way. Thank you for doing that.
I have some common sense. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Oh, okay.
You cannot believe how much money $200 million a year.
Is that right?
They got